Okay, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I am thrilled to be able to share with you poems from brand new issues of cc&d magazine that was just released. Poems that I wouldn't be reading at my open mic this month. That's called Poetic License, but this book is titled Into the Surf. Into the Surf, and because it's summertime, I had to make a point to have penguins jumping into the Southern Ocean over heaps of icebergs and stuff, because it's kind of warm right now. We seem that it's nothing to do with global warming, I'm positive, but I figure we need some cool relief after having such a warm summer. So Into the Surf indeed. I thought I'd share with you a couple of poems from this that I am not going to be sharing in an open mic. This is in honor of the Poetic License open mic. That is a reading space that I would read 10-minute features from on the first Wednesday of every month from 1 to 3 p.m. Central Standard Time in North Austin. This first poem is from the performance arts section. A couple of them from there for you in this issue that I'm going to share with you. And this first one is a Twitter-length poem. As we can see, when they're Twitter-length, they might have an Instagram image as well that comes with it. I'll see if I can get a larger image on a screen to share with you. That is for the element bismuth in an ocean of one. Only tiny bits of bismuth are in the Pacific. Not unlike the one lonesome whale, the Navy heard at 52 hertz, higher than what any other whale can hear. Media, musicians mourned. We all understood that loneliness until Ocean Audio heard two 52 kilohertz sounds, proving no one's truly alone. There are images in this book, but it's always cool when I can also show you a larger version in color on the screen. Bismuth in an ocean of one. It might not be that easy to see on a live stream or on a video feed on YouTube or whatnot, so I say you can always go to Scarset TV for this book to look it up, or look for the poem Bismuth in an Ocean of One under my ratings, and you can find this image there as well. But I am going to go on and share with you a couple of longer poems that are in this, also performance art sections of cc&d. This first one is called My Kind of Town. After walking through the Forbidden City in Beijing, China, where all palace doorways had gold-covered risers blocking people's way into rooms 4 inches to a foot tall, because the higher your level of authority or royalty status in the kingdom, the higher the bar people had to step over. Not on, over, to get inside the royalty's room. But after the Forbidden City, I entered the Summer Palace. An old Chinese man walked up to me with what I believe was his granddaughter, walking 1 foot behind. Though who knows, in China this young girl could have been one of his concubines, but it's really not for me to judge. But the older Chinese man walked up and asked, in the best English he could muster, where I was from. So I told him the United States, and then I said Chicago. That's when this man's eyes lit up, and he said, "My kind of town." And I laughed, nodding my head in agreement. And then he leaned toward me and he said, "Frank Sinatra sang that." And I laughed again. "Yes, he did," I said. Because even though this world is so vast, we will always find ways to connect with one another. Another performance art piece that is also related, I suppose, to Chicago Pulse. It talks about Chicago stuff in it, I guess. This is titled Communications 2012. Now that we have the information superhighway, we can throw out into the open our screams, our cries for help so much faster than we could before. But what if we don't want to communicate, or forget how? Too busy leaving messages, voicemails, emails, pager numbers, and forgetting to call back? What if we forget how to communicate? When I was young, I felt the world was the size of a thimble, because all I needed to know was my backyard when I played with my neighbor, And I know I wasn't allowed to ride my bike far, but when I collected enough change, I'd ride my bike all the way to the local ice cream parlor. Once I was on my own, commuting on my Chicago job on the L train, I suddenly felt like a tiny little dot in this universe, crammed in like sardines into that L train tin can, saving money for a road trip to Omaha, Nebraska. The idea of buying a brie sandwich to eat on the street side in Paris, or skipping the nesting dolls for a Balika in Russia, or photographing the finch in flight in the Galapagos Islands, those dreams seriously seemed a solar system away. But as time wore on, I learned that I could get myself out to the world through the internet. Being a magazine editor, I now interact with people from the US, Canada, England, Ireland, Italy, Belgium, Malta, Norway, Japan, Russia, Slovenia, South Africa, Turkey, India, Israel, Pakistan, Iran. While selling photography sittings in my job, I had to learn more Spanish as well. Since the last time I sang my song, What We Need in Life live, I wanted to try to sing it in other languages. G translated it into Espanol. ¿Qué necesitamos en la vida? Oh, I should sing it. ¿Qué necesitamos en la vida? Oh, and Nate translated it into German. Was auf das Leben brachen. Karina even explained how to sing it in Romanian. Shevem navoy an viața. Since then, Renata taught me what we need in life in Poland. Irma from the Philippines even translated it in Tagalog for me. Maga kalangang a spiritual sabuhay. Wow. But the thing is, at the open mic I now hosted, because Bakis has sponsored this location, both at the Cafe Aloha and the cafe, for 15 years. I had to beg Igor to translate it into Serbian. Ono što mi treba životu. And you know, looking at this planet, I think that if I could shoot an arrow through this planet from the United States, you'd get to waters east of South Africa. So Francois translated and Roseanne sang it in Afrikaans, because really, now that I'm dipping my foot into this global wading pool, I should really learn how to communicate a little better. Because now that we have the information superhighway, we can throw out into the open our screams, our cries for help so much faster than we could before. Our pleas become computer blips, tiny bits of energy traveling through razor-thin wire, traveling through space, to be left for someone to decipher when they find the time. Over the years, I had traveled around this country and instant messaged from my laptop when I was in Denver's Netherworld Cafe, or Hotel Monteleone in New Orleans, or C-Ro's Penny Dreadful House in Nashville, or at the National Poetry Slam in Albuquerque. And I have a cell phone that I use only occasionally to call people. And that phone has a camera, but I don't bother to use it. I mean, that's what I have a camera for. And with phones that are cameras that can upload your pictures to Facebook, all I can think is that it has to be insanely confusing to teach a small child about the realities of the world in the modern age. Because when the cell phone rang and Mommy says to little Susie, "It's Grandma. Say hello to Grandma," does this little girl think this inanimate object gave birth to her mother? And when she figures out what a phone is, Susie still has to come to grips with some phones also being like an office computer, or also being a camera. You know, like the one that her grandfather uses in all the family get-togethers. I mean, maybe Susie is young enough to fit all the little pieces together, but I still prefer a camera that feels like a camera with a better lens and better resolution, separate from a computer or a phone that feels like a phone. Because now that we have the information superhighway, we can throw out into the open our screams, our cries for help so much faster than we could before. People want an instant message. People buy their name as a domain name. People text each other to communicate. People get email accounts. People set up web pages. And you know, I've got a cell phone. I've got a landline. But my phone isn't ringing off the hook. It's like I've gone fishing sat on a boat at a lake, put out the bait, and no one's biting. I wanted to get in touch with an old high school friend of mine, Vince. When the last I'd heard, he was in Marquette University. That was years ago. He could be anywhere. I talked to a friend or two that knew him, but they said they lost touch with him too. So I searched on the internet to see if his name was on a website or if he had an email address. He didn't. So I figured I probably wouldn't find him. And all this time, I knew his parents probably lived in the same house they always did. I could just pick up the phone, pick up the phone book, look up his parents' phone number, and then call him and say, "Hi, I'm an old friend of mine of Vince's." But I never did. And then I realized why. You see, I could search the internet for hours, and no one would know that I was looking for someone. But now, with a single phone call, I'd make it known to his entire family that I wanted to see him enough to call after all these years. And I didn't want that. I didn't want him to know that, so I never called. Because now that we have the information superhighway, we could throw out in the open our screams, our cries for help so much faster than we could before. But the question begs itself. Who is there to listen? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I am going to share with you one more. And by the way, this was before Facebook, about finding Vince, if anybody's worried about that or whatever. But that was just a fascinating insight in the story about how you do searches like that for people. And I actually use my cell phone all the time, and I don't have a landline anymore. But I bought a phone unit so you could just hold a regular phone into your phone. And I'm talking long distance to my husband for a long time, and I'm like, this is the most amazing thing to have a regular phone to my ear instead of this big plastic thing pressed against your face for talking for a long period of time. This is the coolest thing. I know it's old school. I mean, I've got old phones sitting in the back here of some of my stuff as well. So, I have these things, but there is a coolness to that idea. Anywho, in this book later on, and this often happens with prose, if I have something about an element, I will follow it up with poetry about that element. So I'm going to share with you one poem for the element holmium. Holmium. This is holmium. Got a set of poetry word magnets, so you could arrange words on your fridge to write messages or write a poem. And even though I remembered that magnets have two sides with two poles, I still took one of the magnets, I think the word on the magnet was stick, and turned it around to see how it wouldn't stick to that fridge. Now, holmium has the highest magnetic strength of any element, so I thought about this magnet's poles. But I didn't know that scientists have been using holmium to try to discover the wildly theorized and avidly debated magnetic monopole, a magnet that only has one pole. Grand unified and superstring theories predict their existence, and these magnetic monopoles could explain a ton about space, time, and the laws of physics. But the theory is that there's so little of it, and nobody's been able to even find it, so they'll keep using this magnetic holmium to try to find this hypothetical particle. And it's strange. When it comes to holmium, I mean, it's used to color cubic zirconia, and when it comes to that magnetism, holmium can even absorb nuclear neutrons. But the cool thing is that holmium is used for dental and medical purposes, and it's even used with solid-state lasers to remove some early-stage cancers with only local anesthetic. Wow. That, and it can help scientists understand more about the universe, even if it's only on the quantum level. I guess there was a reason why I was so drawn to this element for these qualities. Alright, sorry, you had to get your science lesson at the end. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you very much for listening to select poems from the brand new issue of cc&d magazine that is titled Into the Surf, which needed to be Gen 2 penguins, actually. Those are Gen 2 penguins. Jumping into the Southern Ocean in a lot of ice, because when things are a little warm here, it seems good to be able to have something like this to be able to counter the heat with. So I hope everyone is remaining safe. I hope everyone is remaining creatively inclined. Get out there and enjoy yourselves, because maybe I'll do one more reading for another new book release in honor of the Community Poetry reading spaces on the first Wednesday of every month from 1 to 3 p.m. Central Standard Time before coronavirus took over. Hang in there, and I look forward to talking to each and every one of you very, very soon. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thanks.